I'm Julie Barkey with this session update. Still no deal between the governor and legislative leaders. With less than 4 days left in session, the two sides continue to meet, and they do make some movement in areas of policy, but not on the budget. Now, each addressed the media today. The governor following an afternoon bill signing, the GOP leaders immediately following a 3 o'clock meeting with the governor. Right now, we want to show you some of their remarks from earlier today.
Very cordial meeting with the Republican leadership, Senator Koch, Speaker Zellers, Majority Leader Dean, Majority Leader Michelle. You know, we again remain at a basic difference over $1.8 billion, which I believe should be made up with revenues, a tax increase on the wealthiest 2% of Minnesotans, and they believe should be made up with cuts in services to the rest of Minnesotans. And I reiterated again, that I wanted an overall agreement on a budget framework that concludes that $1.8 billion in revenues before getting into a detailed discussion on and conclusion on the amount of spending reductions that would be necessary in each of the spending bills to reach the other $1.8 billion in cuts. So, that impasse remains. Subsequently, I had a very productive meeting with Senator Olson and Representative Garofalo on the education bill with Commissioner Cassellius, and there's some significant differences there, but we had a productive discussion, and then that lasted about an hour, and then I had just finished an almost 2-hour meeting with Senator Perry and Representative Lanning and Representative Downey on the state government bill. And again, we didn't reach conclusions, but we took sort of some of the non-fiscal areas, more of the policy areas, and had a very productive meeting discussing those and finding areas where we could find some agreement with further discussion. So I hope we can continue those kinds of meetings over the next 3 days, and I hope there's some breakthrough on the part of the legislative leadership to accept my proposal to meet them halfway on the budget, and if they were willing to do so, then we'd have an agreement and they could go home with their mission accomplished. And if they don't agree, then I'm pessimistic that we'll be able to conclude this by midnight on Monday.
I think a couple of the key provisions, the number is always the number, but drilling down again on some of the policies, I think the governor had a very, like Senator Perry and Representative Lanning came out and told you all that they had a very productive and very successful meeting understanding some of the specifics in those bills. So if it's just about the number, then we're going to be it'll take a long time. But if you can say, okay, we're off 80 million, what is that 80 million in your target that we need to adjust for? So that's why, to Senator Koch's point, she was very determined about that. What is that target then? Please show us that. And that's what we kind of thought we had this morning. Maybe we got walked back a little bit, or maybe it's a little change in terminology or whatnot, but for us, that's very important to see that, because then it helps us, again, adjust. And I think we have gone out of our way to make it as accommodating as possible to see what it is the governor agrees and disagrees with us on, other than, and this one we pretty much, I think, is chiseling a couple of the stones around here, that he wants a tax increase and we don't.
They're the ones who specialize in cuts. I mean, they're the ones who should be detailing their priorities of the first 1.8 billion, and then the second 1.8 billion are ones that I will give them the opportunity to discard, so they're not so draconian. And so I thought I was helping them out there by getting them off the hook on some of these things that are so extreme. Metro Transit, $109 million, and 19% cut for the University of Minnesota, and 14% cut for MnSCU. So I think I would make their task easier if they would agree on the revenue side, and I just said that the revenue has got to be at least moving apace with the spending reduction side. I'm not going to negotiate their side of the ledger when they're unwilling to negotiate my side of the ledger.
We're optimists, but we're determined too. We're not going to give up. Giving up now, again, the third quarter, the game's tied, throwing in the towel is just not the people. We owe it to the people to be here every minute of every day, trying to figure out a way to get ourselves out of here by May 23rd. And that's our commitment. We've we've now become conditioned like athletes that run long marathons. We're conditioned to go on little sleep, lots of chocolate and coffee. So we're ready to, keep going on that.
That bridge when we get to it. We won't assume the veto yet, and we're going to keep talking.
And if there's a veto out there, usually in the veto letter there's some indication as to some of the disagreements that he may have with us. That's a good indication of where we could go as well. But to Senator Koch's point, until we see a veto and a veto letter and a vetoed bill, it's a little premature to react. So, thanks, everybody. We got to go back and practice.
Mayor's going to come up today, tomorrow?
Since those news conferences, the governor has been presented the K-12 finance bill. No action has been taken on it yet.